andata da fuori anche a lui. Anche lui da fuori.
What? The normal ones. Yeah, we can use. Yeah, just see how the race is going.
For Lowe's, this season being blighted by a shoulder injury all the way back from winter testing, and obviously, like you said, Alex, in Navarra last time around we saw a step forward. Hopefully for him he's able to make a similar kind of weekend this weekend. He wants to be able to get himself back into those podium fights. He's been pretty quick all the way through this weekend, up there inside those leading positions. Now he just needs to make that small step to see if he can close up on the likes of Ray Razgatlioglu at the front.
Andrea Locatelli, who we mentioned a couple of moments ago, is 5th in the world at present and still very much in contention for 4th. He's made up 45 points on Alex Lowe's over the last 3 rounds, and as you just said a couple of moments ago, only sits 18 points back now.
Yeah, and certainly for Locatelli, the progress we've seen from him all the way through this season means that you're not surprised to see him up there inside the top 5. You're not going to be surprised to see him challenge for the podium, and at some point this season, maybe even give himself a chance of being able to get into the fight for the race victories, because he's been fast and consistent all the way through the last few rounds.
Strong performance in Superpole from Leon Haslam. He completes the 2nd row of the grid. Great deal of talk over the course of this weekend and indeed last time out in Navarra about who might occupy the rides with Team HRC for 2022. Those are the biggest factory rides still up for grabs as far as next season is concerned. Yamaha are maintaining the status quo, as are KRT. We know about the changes at Ducati. We know what's going on at BMW. So it's all about that Honda ride at the moment. Leon Haslam has said he's keen to remain, and that emphasis on what he'd like to do in the future may well work in Honda's favour, just to keep one of the two, because we already know that Alvaro Bautista is moving on.
Yeah, and for Honda being able to hold on to someone to give them that bit of continuity can be important. But certainly that programme is going to need to have some fresh blood put into it. It's going to need to change an awful lot that's been the issues over the course of the last couple of years. There's been potential there. If you think back to last year especially, they made big progress, and I think there was an expectation that coming into this weekend they'd be able to, come into this season, they've been able to make a bigger step forward. Obviously it's been a really tough season for them, but part of the reason it's been a tough season is because Ducati, Kawasaki and Yamaha have been so quick, consistent and dominant this season that it's made it really difficult for anyone else to make a real break into those leading positions.
Honda suffered their worst round of the season here in Manicourt in 2020. Bautista and Haslam scored just 8 points between them, and therefore they'll be keen to get something more representative on the board over the course of this weekend. But neither of them inside the top 10 positions in the championship. Bautista down in 11th position, Haslam in 13th. Really has been a miserable run for Honda.
Yeah, and hopefully in this weekend's running we're able to see them make that step forward. We saw yesterday Bautista was within 0.7 of a second of the fastest times in free practice. We've seen him up there in the top 12, 13, 14 positions this weekend. Actually quite close on lap time, but pushes him further down the field because it's so competitive here this weekend. The one thing about Bautista is that we know he's going to be consistent over the course of the full race distance.
Just caught a glimpse of Michael van der Mark a couple of moments ago. He and Tom Sykes among the potential surprise packages, as it were, for an outside bed at a podium if the opportunity presents itself, because we know that BMW have had good results here over the last couple of seasons. Think back to last season with Tom Sykes and Eugene Laverty both qualifying on the front row of the grid. Tom Sykes was a race one podium finisher with third position here in 2019. So we know that BMW runs well around this circuit, and they have been on the pace, both of them inside the top 10 throughout this weekend so far.
Yeah, and I think for Van der Mark especially, having missed out in so much running, it was impressive to be able to come in, give himself a decent qualifying position from the Super Pole session, and we'll see what he can do. He goes really well here at Magny-Cours. He will look to make some progress during this race and be confident of making progress in this race, whereas you'd expect Tom Sykes qualifying on the front row of the grid. That's out of position for where the BMW is relative to its race pace, so Sykes is going to fall back into the pack as the race progresses. The big thing for him is to continue that trend we've seen this year, where he doesn't fall like a stone. He's able to manage his pace a lot better this year than in previous years.
Yeah, certainly last season in particular, he tended to slip back pretty dramatically from strong grid positions. His grid positions haven't quite been as brilliant so far this season as perhaps over the recent years, but he's been able to hold it in terms of position more often than not, and we'll see if he can just hang around there inside the top 6 positions. Certainly after that Super Pole session, that was what he said was the target, to stay with the leaders as long as possible. Yeah,
and I think that's a realistic goal, and at least we've seen all the way through that they haven't really been setting themselves these wild targets of trying to win races. That's, at the moment, given how quick the top 3 riders have been over the course of the season, a little bit of an unrealistic goal. The goal has to be just to come away with top 6, top 7 finishes and score decent points race in, week out. And I think that's where we've seen the likes of Locatelli's been really impressive, because he set himself realistic targets, and now the target for him is just to try and move from being inside those top 5 positions to being able to get fully into those scraps for the podium spots.
Yes, as far as BMW are concerned, they are 4th in the Manufacturers' Championship at the moment, but we've got our top 3 manufacturers separated by just 9 points, and I think that's a fair reflection of how evenly matched they've been this season.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a season where we've seen it at different times. Different manufacturers have been able to get themselves in there. Donington Park for BMW is really strong. This weekend looks strong for them. Honda looks strong this weekend. Obviously, Leon Haslam's had a lot of success here at Magny-Cours in the past. Now it's up to him to try and make sure he's able to maintain that over the course of a full race distance. If he's able to come away with a top 8 finish, I think that's a really good start to the weekend for Honda.
Look at the grid then here in Manicours, starting with the front row. Jonathan Rea, Toprak Razgatlioglu and Tom Sykes. Rea with 8 wins from the opening 5 rounds, hasn't added another since, but this is a venue where he's always gone well. Winner in 8 of the last 14 races staged here. He's only been off the podium once in his last 8 around here.
Yeah, and for Jonathan, this has always been a really good track for him, and the Super Pole session was a real turn up for the books as well, because we've seen Toprak so fast this weekend. Scott Redding was a disappointment for the performance relative to where he's had for the rest of this weekend. So we're going to expect to see him make some progress during the race. But for Jonathan Rea to be able to take that pole position, it was a real perfect lap, showed just how strong he is.
Alongside Rea here is Toprak Razgatlioglu, outscored by him 50 points to 18 around this venue last season. Of course, he can't afford a repeat of that in 2021. It's taken a run of 6 consecutive podiums for him to level the scoring at the top. At least one race win in 4 of the last 5 race weekends, the most consistent Toprak's ever been.
Yeah, for Toprak, he's the full package now, and he's consistent on all kinds of tracks, all kind of temperatures. And for him and Yamaha, the progress they've made this year really has been absolutely fantastic.
Tom Sykes lines up P3. Manicourt has traditionally been a good venue for him. 11 times he's been a podium finisher here. 2020, of course, turned into something of a nightmare for him. 12 points, his lowest scoring visit to France since 2011. Yeah,
and for Sykes, we'll see if he's able to convert that front row start into decent points-paying positions. The goal for him will be just to stay inside those top 6 positions.
Jonathan Rea with yet another Super Pole performance earlier on this morning. It's 8 in a row for him, and as we saw earlier on, that's a record that he snatches away from Ben Spies, the previous record that he'd tied at 7 after Navarra last time out. 8 out of 8, that's some achievement.
Yeah, there's jewellery stores back in Belfast with less watches than Jonathan Rea has, but for Rea, remarkable achievement, like you said, Alex, and now it's up to him to build on it and give himself that chance of being able to add to his win tally here in Magny-Cours as well, because he'll know that in the upcoming rounds he'll expect that he'll be strong here and he'll be very strong in Portimao, but we also know that Catalunya and Jerez is where the Yamaha is going to be very strong too, so he'll know that when you've got your good weekends, you've got to take advantage.
Second row of the grid, Alex Lowe's, Andrea Locatelli and Leon Haslam. Lowe's here with 3 podium finishes in the last 4 races around this venue, one where he's had strong results in the past, as I say. This afternoon bidding for his first 2021 podium since race 1 of the UK round.
Yeah, for Lowe's, we've obviously seen over the course of the last few rounds trying to recover, and it's been a tough stretch with some really physical racetracks, and once you're a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of your fitness, that can be an issue. We've seen that with Chaz Davis with a shoulder injury as well through the course of this season. So for today's race, all about trying to make sure you're able to just stay in that lead pack for all these riders at the front.
Great shot there of Jonathan Rea with Toprak Razgatlioglu lurking in the background. That's a nice Toprak enjoying that opportunity as well to give us a thumbs up. That's a nice reflection of where superbikes have been in the last couple of years. Jonathan Rea knowing that he's got a spectre on his tail in Toprak who could one day claim his crown. Could it be as soon as 2021? P5 on the grid, Andrea Locatelli, the superbike rookie, of course, one of 2021 stars, only 11th in the championship after Donington Park. He's since gone on a run of 9 consecutive top 5 results, including 2 podium finishes, and he now sits in 5th. Well, we have an opportunity to catch up with our pit reporter, Anthony Nelson, who's on the grid.
Thanks, Alex. I'm here by Leon Haslam on the grid. And Leon, 300th race start at World Superbike, 5th rider to achieve it, an incredible milestone. It's also your best qualifying performance of the season, and the Hondas look quite good this year, this round.
Yeah, we're definitely the characteristics of the circuit's helping us a little bit. We had a real positive test in Barcelona a few weeks ago. We've got another test after here, so yeah, big 300 is always nice. Yeah, you know, for me, I'm really happy about this project. It's been a tough 2 years, and I'm really confident that it'll get to it where it should be, and yeah, we'll hopefully have a good result on the 300th race.
Best of luck, Liam.
Thank you.
Michael Ruben Rinaldi then lining up on row number 3, alongside him Scott Redding and Michael van der Mark. Rinaldi, who's never previously finished higher than 6th around this circuit, he'll be particularly keen to do so this afternoon after what was a challenging Navarra round a couple of weeks ago. Only 68 points from the last 12 races for him. And just to explain, Leon Haslam with the becoming only the 5th Superbike rider here to reach 300 race starts. This will actually be his 25th race in Magny-Cours as well. Only 71 points this season so far. He's down in 13th in the standings. Precious little other than those 300 races to celebrate for him in 2021.
Yeah, it's been a real tough season for Haslam, tough season for Honda, but at least starting from the 2nd row of the grid gives himself a decent opportunity. What's going to be interesting to see is what everyone opts for the tyre sheets, to see whether or not they were going to try something a little bit different at the front of the field.
Back to the 3rd row, and alongside Michael Ruben Rinaldi, we have Scott Redding, race 2 winner here in Magny-Cours last season, and a man on form at present, only 1st or 2nd in the last 7 races, his best run of consecutive consecutive podiums. He was the Race 2 winner here last season. But Redding starting down in 8th place, and as I said previously, that is his worst Superpole effort of this 2021 campaign, and somewhat mystifying because he really had the pace, certainly on the evidence of what we'd seen over the course of free practice. Michael van der Mark completes the 3rd row of the grid, the Dutchman who's lost 17 points to his teammate Tom Sykes just over the last 2 rounds. Van der Mark 9th in the championship, and really even in his Honda days he'd never found himself as far back as he is at present. So Van der Mark 131 points. Tom Sykes on 146 is 15 up the road, currently 7th in the championship standings. But all of those riders, from Alex Lowes, who we mentioned previously, currently sitting in 4th, down to Michael van der Mark in 9th, covered by just 38 points. So any big weekend for any of those riders, and they really could leapfrog themselves up the order. So that completes the 3rd row of the grid. We're now on to row number 4. This is Chaz Davies, 3 times a race winner here in Manicourt, but not since 2017. It's certainly been slimmer pickings for him since then generally. He's only made 2 of the last 8 podiums at this venue and just 1 top 3 finish this season so far. He's had more than that in all of his previous World Superbike seasons. He, like Michael van der Mark, hit the ground running over the course of free practice, and hopefully for Chaz Davies, he can then make a sustained impression over the remainder of the weekend. Likewise for Garrett Gerloff, 9 races now without a top 5 finish. It's been pretty anonymous really in recent weekends. 2 8th place finishes on what was his first visit here to Manicourt in 2020, though there's been very little consistency to his results, to be perfectly honest, in general in WorldSBK.
Yeah, we've seen over the course of this year Gerloff right at the front of the field. Hopefully we're able to see him make some progress from that 4th row of the grid and make a step forward over the last couple of rounds, where he's basically just done his best just to keep his nose clean.
Axel Bassani, 7 top 10 finishes in the last 9 races for him. He's impressed many with his results in 2021. This is the venue where he enjoyed his best Supersport result, with 4th in 2016. A 5th place from race 1 in Most, his best in the Superbike class so far. But already with 1 memory from this circuit, Axel Bassani, who completes the 4th row of the grid, being promoted, of course, after the withdrawal of Luca Meyer. Still on the 5th row will be Alvaro Bautista down in 13th place. Now for Bautista, Manicourt was his lowest scoring venue last season, only scored 5 points and failed to make it into the top 10 in any of the 3 races. Even in the 2019 campaign, when he was a title challenger, 2 5th places the sum of his efforts. This hasn't generally been a good track for Bautista.
No, and for Bautista, we've seen it over the course this weekend. He's been within a second of the fastest times, but needs to find those few tenths of a second. Maybe during the course of the race, his ability to manage his tyres is going to make it come towards him.
9 points last weekend in Navarra. Tito Rabat's best result since Estoril, where he scored the only 2 top 10 finishes he's managed so far in 2021. Tito Rabat with a very challenging campaign for him, down in 15th overall. Completing the 5th row of the grid is Christophe Ponson. Of course, a home round for him. He's picked up points in each of the last 4 feature-length races, with a best of 11th in Most. He left his only previous home round in 2015 scoreless, so he'll be keen to avoid that fate this afternoon. That rounds out the top 15 on the grid then, the front 5 rows of the grid, so it's our second opportunity to cross down to Anthony.
Cheers, Alex. And down here with Sean Muir by Tom Sykes on the front row of the grid. Both guys inside the top 9 for this qualifying position, despite a lack of running time in a couple of free practice sessions. We have seen some good pace in the BMW here. What are you expecting for this race?
Yeah, well, Tom can get away with these guys at the very front. I think he can stay in contention for the podium. We've proved we've got the pace. Mikey had a bit of an issue with the new engine, which threw a fault up, so he lost a complete session this morning, which has really annoyed us. Similar thing happened at Assen, but you know, we've been pretty fault-free up to date this year, and to get those 2 issues, but nevertheless it didn't happen in a race. That's the main thing. Just lacking a bit of track time for Mikey, but I think Mikey can come through, and I think he can jump on this group, because 3rd row was 9th and a better was our target, and he achieved that. Yeah.
Well, best of luck, Sean, for the race.
Cheers. Thank you.
So the target was 9th or better, and he matched it spot on. Perhaps Sean should have put the target as P1.
Well, I tell you what, you can use your targets to be a little bit unrealistic, or ones that you can actually hit.